Welcome to the Underwater Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of underwater portrait photography, cinematography, and everything in between. With me, your host, Brett Stanley. Welcome back to the Underwater Podcast. And as this month is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, I wanted to share some stories of people who are using the underwater experience as part of their therapy. And this week, I'm talking to model Jess McIntern and her partner, photographer and illustrator, Hoddinott. In 2016, Jess was diagnosed with breast cancer, and as you'll hear in the interview, they came up with a pretty special way to document her path to recovery that also took her mind off the treatments. Alright, let's dive in. Joe and Jess, welcome to the Underwater Podcast.
Thanks so much for having us.
Hey, thanks for having us.
You guys have such an interesting story, and I kind of want you guys to take the lead on this because I know a little bit about what you guys have come through and how you met and what that kind of led to. Do you want to give me an idea of your backstory? So kind of let us know where you guys met and how we got to this point.
She stalked me for quite a while, honestly. It was pretty. No, we had met through a mutual friend, and I had asked Jess to come to a model shoot with me, and that's how we met. We met on a set, and it was just for fun. It was actually for something to do with for the radio station that she worked at. I think it was like this little side event they were doing for the release of the first Avengers movie. Oh, right. Marvel Avengers. So we did a little comic book photo shoot and it was all fun, this and that. But like the moment I saw her, I was like, oh, hi. Like, I would like to know her. And that was love at first sight for me. And I'm pretty sure she didn't know I existed.
Okay. Is it the same for you, Jess?
Not quite. I immediately stuck my foot in my mouth by making fun of the fact that we were modeling with children's masks. So there was like Iron Man and Thor and the Hulk stuff. And I'm like, ew, are these little kids stuff? Kids are so gross. They're always sticky. And then I realized like, oh, he probably has a kid. And she's like, yep, he does. And I was like, great. He's going to make me fat in all the photos.
Oh, no. And how did it turn out? Did he edit you properly?
He did. I look very nice. And it's kind of crazy that we have all these pictures of the day we first met. And after that shoot, we kind of stayed in contact just as friends for a while. We did a couple photo shoots together and our relationship just evolved from there.
Oh, that's great. And so talk me through, because you guys ended up working together and shooting underwater. How did that sort of come about?
That was something that I kind of just always wanted to do. I wasn't really a water person. Like I wasn't a certified diver. I wasn't any of that. I just always looked at underwater portraits, art from videos, things like that. And I wanted to kind of create that sort of surrealism. And then coupled with, seeing Jess underwater, who I was quite enamored with, I thought, let's go ahead and give it a shot. I'd got a loaner housing from a friend of mine and invited her over. And that was back in 2012. It was my first time shooting underwater. I mean, it was daylight and a pool light and I had no clue what I was doing. We just jumped in and went for it.
Yeah. And how was it from your side, Jess? Had you done modeling underwater before?
Absolutely not. I kind of joke that I'm not a real model. I just play one on the internet. I really just did modeling things for fun. And so when he said, do you want to model underwater? I was like, why not? So I thought it was a really good time. And I didn't know that he didn't know exactly what he was doing. I mean, short of him telling me like, I've never really done this before, but I really didn't know, looking at it now from what we're doing at this point to back then, I'm like, oh, wow, you were really winging it.
Yeah. Right. And so how did those images turn out?
Actually, pretty good. We got one really good shot. A friend of mine came with me and she ended up getting in the water too. And there's a photo of the two of us pretty symmetrically on the bottom of the pool that looks awesome.
Oh, great.
It's not anywhere near what we're doing now, but for everybody's first time modeling underwater and his first time shooting underwater, I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's the thing. Like, I think with underwater, once you have that first go, it's such a learning experience and I think your expectations are fairly low. And then you have these kind of amazing moments where you're like, actually, that was pretty good.
Yeah, I kind of went into it knowing that my keeper rate was going to be pretty terrible. Knowing before in a sort of a prior life, I had a photo studio and I did weddings and portraits for almost 10 years. And so I had a good idea of what I was doing with a camera and my keeper rate. But once I kind of started working underwater, I quickly knew that I might get a photo, maybe two.
Yeah.
And that still carries over today to some shoots where I'm like, maybe I'll have a photo, maybe two.
I think that's pretty common for a lot of us, that the hit rate is pretty low, I think, because you've got so many things going on with all the water and just having two people who can't communicate underwater kind of makes it a little hard. How was it when you started working together? Like, were you guys together at this point?
At this point, not. We weren't dating. We were still just friends.
Right.
We started dating, I want to say shortly after, probably by the end of the summer, we had officially started dating. But we've had a really good rapport probably since the first day that we met, especially since my icebreaker was making fun of his son.
Right. Yeah, that's always a good way to go.
Yeah, our communication is very much us just kind of messing with each other all the time, which is helpful when you're shooting and it's very stressful. We can kind of give each other shit and laugh through the difficult points when we're doing photos, because everybody always hits that really frustrating point where you're not quite achieving what you want from either end, or you're not sure what the other person is going after. We can kind of work it out that way.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys have a good little system between you to kind of get through these difficult points.
Usually it's a lot of yelling at each other.
Yes.
What are you doing? It's all in jest for the most part. It's not mean by any stretch of the imagination, but we've worked through some fairly stressful things to get an idea or a concept across, but it all kind of came about just for fun. It was sort of something that we wanted to do because it was just ours. Nobody else was doing anything like that around here, and we're in the exotic state of Delaware. So really nobody's doing anything like that around here.
Yeah.
And we didn't think it really become anything.
And so where did it go? I mean, did you start to put stuff online? Did you get some recognition for the work?
We got some attention prior. I think in the first couple of years, we got some attention of our local newspaper. Picked up a story. I'd freelanced for them in the past, so I had some contacts, and one of the guys reached out and said, "Hey, we want to run a story on local artists, and you're on the list." So, put some images together, and I think it was one random December or January, printed in the paper, and other than that, it was just online, just Facebook, social media mainly, and just to share between our friends. But one thing that I had learned sort of early on in my photo career, or even prior to that as an illustrator, is to sort of keep something for yourself. And when you're doing a lot of work for other people, you can get burnt out kind of quickly if you don't keep something for yourself. So that's what this was for me, is to keep something for us, or just for me, selfishly, honestly.
So this was more personal work than it was for getting clients or anything.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Definitely your passion project.
Which is in its 9th year now.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you've almost been doing this for 10 years, and for a passion project to be still going that long, that's pretty interesting.
It works out because it's only during the summer. So we only have a specific amount of time that we can do this. So it's not all year round. And you'll see images pop up from his social media and mine throughout the year, but he kind of like squirrels them away for something to work on when we can't be underwater and we can't shoot because the weather's just it's not letting us do anything outside.
Yeah. And so do you then spend the winter kind of scheming for the next summer?
Yeah, especially since the past couple of years, I've thought a lot about like, all right, next season I want to do this. And I call it a season. So I'm like, next season I want to do this. And I've already started doing that. This coming summer is coming up with ideas to try and, just evolve what we're doing. And everything we do is it's really winging it. We're on a shoestring budget. It's not something I'm trying to make money on. It was just a fun thing, but I like to operate at like a high level as I can without, breaking the bank.
Yeah, without investing too much of your hard cash.
Right, with no return on it, correct.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny that towards the end of every summer, we start doing something a little bit different that we run out of time to work on. And that ends up being the thing that we start with next season.
That's really interesting. So do you find that over the winter you're kind of thinking about how to perfect it, the thing you've kind of just kind of prototyped at the end of the summer?
Oh, for sure. One example is I think it was 2 summers ago, we ended up doing projection underwater, where I would do an illustration, digital illustration, do it on the iPad, and then load it onto a digital projector and project that through the water and have her, don't move, stay right there. Let me try to focus the projector on you through the water and then jump in the pool and, get some shots of that. And we ended one summer doing that. And that was like the first thing we did the following summer because I was so excited to try more things. But, we are very weather dependent and time dependent here. We use my family's pool. So it's not even, I don't own it. It's like the whole family uses it. So we schedule our times when nobody's there. And normally that's why we started shooting at night, that and for light control so that I could play more, get away with more things.
That's really interesting, especially with the projector stuff. That must have looked amazing.
Yeah, I think we started that in our dining room. It was like, stand here, get naked, stand there. Let me take some pictures of you, project some images on you and find a couple that we like. And then it's like, yeah, we have to put this underwater.
Yeah, that's how most things work, I think, is you look at something on land and go, oh, that's going to work underwater. Let's try that.
Absolutely.
So let's kind of fast forward a little bit to not a happy time, but when I think, Jess, you got your diagnosis for breast cancer.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed in March of 2016. I ended up going through chemotherapy first, and I ended up wrapping up chemotherapy towards the end of the summer. But chemo was absolutely horrific, and it took everything fun away. You can't drink, you can't lay in the sun. Half the time you don't want to eat, you don't want to get out of bed. And one of the things that I kind of held on to was like, I can still do this. I can still model underwater. And the added bonus of not having to worry about my hair being in my face with the motion of the water. I was like, oh, we're going to make something awesome out of this. But more so, I was just really excited about something that it couldn't take from me, that we were still able to do. So if I was feeling up to it and the weather was conducive, we would shoot pretty much every chance we got as long as I felt good enough to make it to the pool. There were definitely some times when I absolutely couldn't. And we made some really powerful images out of that. But it just put so much more passion behind the project for me, especially to kind of be able to show what I was going through without, not that I didn't want to look weak, but it gave it such grace and beauty, but also showed what a struggle it was at the same time.
Yeah. Did the water give you any kind of relief from the side effects of the chemo?
Sometimes it did. With the type of treatment that I'm going through, my cancer was what's called triple positive. So it was being fed by estrogen and progesterone and also HER2. But I get hot flashes now. And so being in the water completely kind of eliminated those waves of heat coming off of me. And it did, it just felt nice to kind of be relaxed in my own skin in the water when everything felt so raw and rough and sandpaper-like.
Yeah. It was so, I guess getting in that pool was a bit of an escape from the whole situation.
It was really nice to kind of just let go of the weight of everything, metaphorically and physically at the same time.
Yeah. Did you go into it with, like, was it a thing where you thought, I want to document the treatment and my journey through this? Or was it more of I need to get in the water to feel better? We may as well take some photos. It
was much more of us kind of documenting what I was going through and making something that was absolutely horrifying look much more graceful than it looked when I was going through it, during the day and in just regular life. But it was important to us to kind of document my growth and my strength, even though I was probably the weakest I've ever been.
Yeah, that's incredible. What was the growth like? So when you first started modeling again under the water, what was the process you went through in terms of growing under there?
So you could really see that I was feeling stronger. I was feeling better. I had some hair coming back. My body had kind of filled back out because I had lost a lot of weight. But a lot of the images that we shot when I was bald, when I was going through chemo, were very reflective of how I felt at the time. And the following years, it's just gotten stronger and stronger and stronger as far as the images are concerned. We've tried to, show that that process of my continued growth, and there's always more hair and everything is changing, but you can really see how I feel inside coming out through these images as far as, kind of coming back into myself, which has definitely been a process since treatment.
Yeah. Was it strange going underwater without any hair? I mean, hair is such a part of underwater modeling. Did you feel like you were missing something?
I did, but also there was that added bonus of not having to fight with it, because there's so many shots where you'd be like, that was amazing, but my hair was in my face. And now I just was talking to Joe about this the other day. I was like, I totally forgot how to deal with that. This is the longest my hair's been in years. And there are so many images where I'm like, oop, I had to fix my hair on that one. Oh, I have to, tuck it to the side or turn into the way that the water is moving to make sure it's not in front of my face. But everything was kind of a little weird, bald, just because it was something I'd never experienced before. And I'd always had very long hair, probably like down to the middle of my back. And to go from that to nothing was pretty drastic. But I was very lucky in that my head was not oddly shaped when we shaved it. I kind of had my fingers crossed as he's shaving my head going, I hope we don't find anything weird under there.
Like 666 or something.
Yeah. Or like a barcode or, an extra finger.
Yeah, that's right. And Joe, like from your point of view, how was it going into the pool with this sort of documentation in mind? Did it change how you approached this as opposed to how you would normally approach underwater photography?
Definitely did. For me, it was very like almost more emotional. I felt like I was sort of the emotional one and she was the strong one. Don't let her fool you. She was very strong. But we had started by that time using strobes. So I had lighting I was happy with, and it was very technical for me. So we focused on, I think for me, let me back up a second. It went from something that was just fun, yay, there you are, to this is important now. It's more poignant. It has a meaning. It just sort of transcended into something. It was like a switch was flipped, and I started to take it. Not that I wasn't taking it seriously, but I started taking it very seriously from a production standpoint. I wanted things to be physically perfect, and that's when I started actually looking at other photographers and trying to analyze what they were doing, and also looking at film, video, movies, things like that, to try and see what makes this interesting, what makes this work, and how can I replicate that.
Right.
And I had a director of photography, guy named Kurt Jones, reached out, and he's a DP on a couple different shows, and he reached out. We just social media friends randomly, how the internet works, and he said, I saw your stuff and wow, this is great. And we exchanged Christmas cards, and he was like, let me give you some lighting tips. And I was like, please do. This is fantastic, to kind of have an idea of why to light something a certain way, which not that on dry land, we know this, but it seems like a lot of things get forgotten when you go underwater. So I was able to sort of focus on really wild things that I haven't really thought of before. And with her with no hair, it was just a lot of fun to play off I call it the ceiling, like the bottom of the water, the mirror
surface,
yeah. And, where you can bounce light off of that kind of a thing. And just, I really had fun with it that way, but it took on an air of seriousness and almost became defining for myself as an artist, which was unexpected, but, I embraced it and ran with it.
Yeah. I mean, I think you guys have done amazing work. These photos, they're emotive, but they're yet so minimalistic, I think. For those who haven't seen them, it's Jess, mostly naked, but very backlit. So there's a lot of negative space, I guess, which kind of leaves room for interpretation, which I think is beautiful.
Yeah, we played a lot with fabrics. I cut a lot of really long bolts of fabric, and we would throw those in the water, and we tried different colors. Most of the time we settled on white because it bounces the light around more attractively and things like that. And she was really able to turn it into a dress or let it just be a background element. And I think one of the strongest photos that I think we've ever made, I know I've personally ever made, is this one that we call it Reborn. And it's where she's just curled up in the fetal position. I ended up flipping it over, inverting it. And she stretched. Now, she's the artist of the fabric. She does the fabric work. She laid the fabric out behind her. I mean, no safety divers, nobody. And she laid this fabric out and then curls up in the pose, and I shot it and was like, I hope I never take a photo this good again, but I'm glad we have that. But
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
I'm done. I don't want to do another one like that.
What's going through your mind, Jess, when you're doing a pose like that, knowing what you're going through? Are you kind of working through some emotional stuff, or are you kind of just happy to be floating and to be empty?
A little bit of both. I've always been a very active person. I really enjoy working out and just doing. And when I was going through treatment, I couldn't do anything. I fainted quite a few times. I just wasn't having a very good time of it. And this was something I could still do and not feel like I was heavily exerting myself. And I could still make it look graceful without showing how much I really was struggling. And I found it very easy to kind of relax and do different poses under the water, just because it did take a little bit of the pressure off of my body somehow. And we would throw ideas back and forth. And a lot of the time, though, it was kind of, well, let's just see what you can do. And when you've had enough, like, let me know, we'll call it a night. So I would just kind of jump up and down and, put my body in different ways to see, what did that look like? Maybe I can try this. And I was like, okay, well, let's give this a shot. Because he would just let me run with whatever I felt like I was capable of doing that day, which definitely varied from day to day. But that specific one, I was like, let's just see what this looks like. And I spent who knows how long futzing with that fabric sheet. But once I got it where I wanted, I'm like, okay, go. And that's kind of our communication is 1, 2, 3, go. And then I will hold my breath for as long as I can and continue to strike poses until I can't anymore. And then pop out of the water and be like, did we get anything? That's definitely has been my approach to it kind of through the whole thing, but especially at that point.
We collaborate a lot on it. And I think she brought up a good point, is that a lot of what we do is like, sometimes we have an idea. Sometimes we really don't. We just like, let's see what happens, like see what the first couple things, what direction it takes us. And maybe we figure something out. And those shoots that summer of 2016, a lot of them, like, we had an idea for certain things, but most of them were just like, just go and see what you do. She orchestrated so much of that on her own. It's fantastic to see.
What was the reaction to the photos once you started to show them to people, and people either did know or didn't know the story behind it? Was there a different reaction from people?
I think once they saw her bald, it was pretty obvious. There was something amiss, something wrong, but she didn't look weak at all. She looked beautiful. She looked powerful, not, thin and things. So once people saw that, it was more like they were just in awe about what she was able to do, the art we were able to make while she was doing that. And we are in a small community of artists here in the exotic state of Delaware. So we had a couple of people reach out, one of which, 2 of them were gallery owners, and, they talked about a show, and we decided to shoot through the summer. And I think we held back a lot of the photos that year. I don't remember specifically, but we saved a lot of photos to show at this gallery opening. They gave us an October date for breast cancer awareness, and they left the show up for a month, which normally when they do shows like this, you have a week or 2 at most. And, I think they saw the significance of it and left it up for a month. And, we had prints available for sale and people were buying them off the wall. It was very new for me because I wasn't in the fine art community at all, but it was like a crash course into the fine art world of photography.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It was very well received. Yeah, I mean, a couple websites, industry websites reached out and wanted to run stories on us, things like that. And it was exciting, but the excitement was kind of wasted a little bit because of what, she was going through. And, as her partner, there's nothing you can do. You just sit there and, can I bring you a water? Can I do this? Can I do that? And otherwise I'll just be quiet, but I'll be right here if you need me. And I'm sure she'll reiterate this. Sometimes just being in the room is all I was, supposed to do that day. So it was sort of like a silver lining a little bit for what we were going through and the things we were trying to do, if that makes sense.
I was very concerned. So I didn't go out in public bald at all. Not that I was embarrassed of being bald or anything. It just wasn't something I felt comfortable doing. And I felt like when you saw me in person bald, it made me look sick, paired with, the fact that I was obviously very gaunt and pale And you could really tell that I was very, very ill. But being bald underwater in these photos made it look strong and graceful. And that was one of the only ways that people ever saw me bald. Almost none of our friends and family saw me without hair. I wore a wig every single day, every time I left the house, to every treatment. So when people started seeing these photos pop up on social media, they were really introduced to not only how sick and how severe this treatment was, although I did share things, in writing through social media pretty consistently to document the process. But this was one of the only ways that they could actually see me with no hair. But I was pretty determined to only show that in a, yes, I'm very sick, but look what I can still do. And, I will come back out of this, or, I might be in fetal position on the couch 5 days out of the week, but give me one good day and here's what I can do.
Yeah. So this was a way of kind of controlling the narrative around you, and which for a lot of people, I think controlling the narrative is for other people, but it's also for yourself. If you feel like you're in control and it's strong, then you feel in control and strong. Is that kind of how that felt?
Absolutely. You definitely, when you're sick and people can see that you're very sick like that, you definitely get a different reaction. And this was kind of my way of taking control of that. And I didn't want to look like I felt on the inside. And this was one of the ways that I was able to accomplish that. Thankfully with Joe's help, because it was definitely a drastic difference between seeing me bald in person and seeing me under the water bald, striking these, very specific, graceful poses in, either white dresses or the white fabric or completely nude. It looked graceful and relaxing as opposed to what was really going on.
Yeah, exactly. And there is, I think, whether you've lost your hair by choice or by not, I think there is a strength with people who can still pose and model like that, because I think the hair is such an integral part of you that suddenly when it's gone, there's less for you to hide behind, metaphorically. So it's very real. It's very you.
That was also kind of something that came up when we started shooting when I had no hair. I'm like, how are you going to be able to tell that I'm underwater? Because a lot of that is how you can tell, how it's all over the place and it's going with the current. Oh my gosh, I couldn't think of that word. So your hair is flowing with the current, and so is whatever you have on. And there were some shots that we did where if we hadn't used what Joe referred to as the ceiling, you might not have realized that I was even underwater.
Yeah, especially when you're in that black void, because there's nothing flowing, and that's what we rely on to kind of get that message across. And then when you added in that fabric, that gave you something from the shots that I've seen, it gives you something to sort of pose in front of, but it also gives that element of being underwater.
Yeah, it does show the motion. It helped to have that fabric and to have the dresses, or to use the ceiling, or I don't think we did much with bubbles in that way, but anything that you could see that indicated that we are actually underwater. But just the floating ones really helped bring it home that like, oh yeah, she's still underwater. She's just not out in space.
Yeah, exactly. Is there advice you would give to other people who are looking to kind of use underwater photography as part of their journey through a sickness like this, through breast cancer or anything like that? Are there things that you'd learnt from doing this?
If you have the ability to get into the water and kind of just relax, it is definitely a way for you to kind of let go of the pressures and kind of just float and just be. Yeah. If you have access to someone who can take your photos underwater, it kind of just puts you in a different world. So you're not the same person that you are, walking down the street and walking into the doctor's office and laying on the couch. It adds some sort of element that kind of removes you from everything, because you have to focus so hard on the difficulties that water brings to the table. So you have to hold your breath, but not look like a chipmunk at the same time. You have to control whatever fabric it is you've got. So if you've got clothes on that are flowing, if you've got hair at the time, if you've got some sort of prop you're supposed to be controlling, that's all part of it. The temperature of the water is absolutely part of it. I prefer not to be freezing. So I'm very lucky that the pool that we use is heated. That's a struggle that we face at the end of the season too. But I would absolutely, support people seeking out just being able to relax in some sort of water. But, if you can get in there and kind of fight through those elements to normalize yourself under the water, it's a complete and utter distraction from everything else because there are so many tiny pieces you have to focus on all at one time.
Absolutely.
One of the things that we I wanted to bring up is we learned the ins and outs of this sort of together, like the buoyancy, like don't inhale, exhale first to, lower yourself. And, before I started weighting myself down, we learned all of that at the same time. And over the years, people have seen our work and said, I want to come over and do it. And they expect photos like Jess and I get together. And a lot goes into, as training them on what to do and how to look and, like some safety things and just to keep them safe and actually looking good underwater. And that's sort of been a little bit of a struggle for us, is trying to work with other people for me and having to I rely a lot on Jess for our images because I just take for granted sometimes that she has been doing this for so long and can just do. We don't even have to think about it. But when there's a new person, you almost have to go through, say, an hour or a half hour of just, talking about, what you want to do. And, these are the things that you exhale a little bit when you go underwater. So that way you don't float right back up, things like that.
Yeah. Well, I guess you and Jess have got a shorthand now. You've been working together and you kind of discovered a lot of this together. So you have this kind of language that you don't need to speak anymore. It's just intuitive.
Correct.
Yeah, there's times where I've actually gotten in the water with friends that we've had over that wanted to do it because I saw them struggling and I'm like, I'll get in with you and show you this process that I kind of just do because I've been doing it now at this point. Once they have come over for, a few months, if it's the summertime or however many years, every season it takes me a little bit of time to get back into it, but I teach them in layers. So, okay, let's work on holding your breath first. Okay, now can you do that and not look like a chipmunk? Okay, now can you do that and think about which direction your body is going to be facing? Okay, now do all of that and then add in whatever it is you're wearing or working with in the background and then do all of that at one time. And that's what I mean when I say that it kind of totally removes you from everything else because you have so many things to focus on that you can't be worrying about, oh, is my stomach upset? Or do I have a headache? Or is my foot cramping? You're so 110% in what you're doing at that moment. It's a complete distraction, which is a huge stress reliever, honestly, and a way for people to kind of distract themselves from whatever it is that you're dealing with in regular life. Once you're under there, you have to achieve your goal, you have to focus on all of these little parts.
Yeah, definitely. And that's part of my philosophy as well, is that breath holding underwater and posing underwater is such a way of focusing yourself and forget about whether it's your fear or your sickness or your anxiety to just kind of give you an escape from that for a little while.
It definitely focuses you.
It is absolutely an escape and a great distraction for people. And it's much more difficult than it looks. I mean, we still struggle every summer to kind of get back into it. And even on good days, I'm like, oh, nope, that was terrible. Hold on, go again.
Yeah.
You really have to be all into it. And that's kind of a little bit of my favorite thing is when we bring people over to do it and they go, oh, yeah, I can do this. And then they see the difficulty and they're like, oh, okay. That moment of realization is kind of my favorite.
Right. Yeah. When they see behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And so you're in remission now? Have you recovered?
So I have had no evidence of disease in 4 years. My 4-year mark is September of this year. And I'm not allowed to say cancer-free for 5 years. So no evidence of disease in 4 years, which is great. I still have ongoing treatments to make sure I stay that way. But it's pretty exciting. Yeah,
that's great. And so what's next for you guys? Have you got projects in the works?
This year, we actually started doing video for the first time, and that was more me playing around. I was like, let's play with video. And she's, kind of indifferent to my desires, is just goes along with it, which I'm extremely grateful for.
Right.
But I think we want to play around with that. And we've talked to a couple local musicians and things like that want to use some photos, one of which commissioned Jess and I to do a magazine cover a couple of years ago for a Halloween issue. We did something that looked like a ghost, where she wrapped herself in the fabric and things like that, and as kind of a way to celebrate. And he's been a good supporter of us throughout, I guess, the last 5 or 6 years. He has a band and is into 70s like space opera stuff. So he wants us to come up with this like set of like Jess in space, which I've actually done illustrations of, but he wants us to do that underwater and use that for his album cover. So that's kind of, I think, what we're going to focus on, or what I'm going to focus on, and then dump on her. Hey, surprise. You just found out for the first time right now. So
congratulations.
Oh, man.
Thank you.
I mean,
to wear like a helmet underwater, I think, is what he wants. So we'll see what we're able to do.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me a little nervous. Yeah, I do. It's definitely Joe's passion project again. Ever since I started feeling better, it's much more his ball game. And I honestly get a little nervous in the summertime when I see an Amazon package at our doorstep, because I'm like, what did you buy? What do I have to wear now? What is that? So now I guess I should be looking for a box with a helmet in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good you've got this lab rat just living with you, Joe.
Right. Yeah. No, she's certainly my muse. And again, I can't express how grateful I am to have someone in my life who I can interact with her through art. And even though it's decidedly not her passion, it's mine, but she puts up with it and gives it 110% every time we work together. And she's a unicorn for sure. And I just have to hold on to it.
That's amazing. Guys, this has been awesome just to hear this story and just to hear how you've used the underwater photography as part of the therapy, I guess, and as a way to give other people a little bit of hope, I guess, in terms of how this sickness can at least be put off for a little while whilst you're underwater.
Yeah, really anything you can do to kind of remove yourself from a situation like that with any type of sickness is a huge benefit. And that's kind of one of the reasons that we've also had people come over and try it themselves, especially if they're kind of going through a little something. It's a complete distraction, and it's very welcomed by everyone that tries it, even if they don't love the experience while they're doing it. They're like, yes, it is a complete removal from everything else.
Right. And sometimes we don't even get a good photo out of it. It's just more the experience and the good time that we have. And then we, sit by a fire pit and, have a couple drinks afterwards to just relax and, like I said, escape from the anxieties and things like that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's beautiful, guys. Thanks so much for sharing it.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And as always, if you like the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share. If you'd like to help with the production of these episodes, you can donate at theunderwaterpodcast.com. Any amount is welcome and really helps to keep the show going. If you'd like to connect with us or learn more about our guests, you can reach us at theunderwaterpodcast.com or on Instagram. We also have a Facebook group where you can discuss the episodes and even get your questions answered by our guests. There's a link to it in the show notes. You can learn more about my underwater photography workshops and mentoring at brettstanley.com or Brett S Photo on Instagram. The Underwater Podcast is presented and produced by me, Brett Stanley, and our music is Neo by Oh Boy. Keep creating, everyone. I'll see you in the water.